Nocturne, making privacy ubiquitous.
It's quite frustrating when you are writing a smart contract and you change a line of code and you're like, is this going to result in my thing getting sanctioned? Or it's like, the ridiculous things you don't normally have to think about.
Do you hold ETH but don't know what to do with it? Want to earn those juicy liquid staking derivative yields but don't know where to start? Well, FrxETH is there for you. FrxETH is Frax's native LSD solution, allowing you to earn boosted yields in multiple ways on your ETH. If you want to get started, go to app.frax.finance and turn your ETH into FrxETH today. Welcome back to Flywheel. I'm your host, DeFi Dave, here with Capital K, and this time we're going dark. We're going to the world of privacy and privacy infrastructure. We have on Luke Chang, who is the founder of Nocturne, which is doing some really cool stuff in the privacy area, privacy realm. And this is our first privacy protocol we've had on Flywheel. And this originally caught my eye because you guys recently had a raise that had Vitalik in it. And I'm just like, whoa, if Vitalik's in it, like we should pay attention. Like cosign, pay attention.
Virtue signaling.
And so, Luke, thank you so much for coming on. It's great to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
And this is coming out in the week after, but yesterday or 2 days ago, you guys launched and you guys had like 1,000 participants in your queue. Like what? So there's definitely like a lot of interest here. So what is going on? Like, why are thousands of people lining up to like use Nocturne?
Yeah. So I guess I can explain what was going on earlier this week, and it was kind of a surprise. We haven't launched the actual product yet. This was just essentially when you write ZK circuits, like you need to do this trusted setup ceremony to like make sure no one can like tamper with this or like break it, and it involves basically just like running this thing that contributes some randomness, and like everyone kind of goes around and does it. And we had opened up the instructions for this on Discord. We're just like, okay, we had like 30 people that we kind of just ran it through internally. It was working fine. We put it in our Discord and like woke up the next morning, there's like over 1,000 people in this queue. It's like the wait time is, it's literally days. We went back, tried to fix it. There were a bunch of bots. There was still over 1,000 after we removed all the bots. And then, there's like 4,000 people in there. I don't think most of them are going to finish, but that's basically what happened. This isn't for the product. It's just for, the trusted setup ceremony.
Oh, for the ceremony. Okay.
Yeah. I was trying to go through the Notion doc to see if I could set one up, but it seems like it is not for the non-technical, right? It's not just like click here, run once.
I guess we tried to make it as easy as possible. But yeah, I could see also like it's not the most reliable. The software for running these ceremonies it's really non-standard. Like I think every team usually has to roll their own. We used a off-the-shelf library, and tooling could improve here for sure.
Yeah. And before we get more into Nocturne, let's learn about you. What's your background, and how did you get interested in starting something like Nocturne?
Yeah. I got into crypto a few years ago. I guess the first crypto company I worked at was Cello. So this, they were building an L1, and it's becoming an L2. I know that caught a lot of headlines.
The Alt1 L2 pivot. We love to see it.
Yes.
It seems like there's going to be a lot more of those. I was working on Cello kind of during the time of DeFi summer, and they, this is when every Alt L1 was trying to like build their bridge to get, Ethereum liquidity. I was on the team of 3 that was building this bridge. We launched it. And then, the team internally at Cloak grew, and we spun this out into the company Nomad, so the cross-chain bridge protocol. So I worked on that for about a year and a half, mostly leading like the off-chain engineering there. And then, after the hack, decided to move on to other stuff, and that's kind of when Nocturne started about a year ago.
Weren't you at Monad, or was that someone else?
Oh, Nomad. Sorry, the name.
Nomad. Oh, Nomad. Oh, Nomad. Okay.
It's interesting. I actually worked with Frax for a little bit, I think, on Moonbeam. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I remember.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And then you started Nocturne. Has privacy been something that always interested you? Because it definitely is a very tall order. I think like some of the hardest things in crypto. I mean, you got running a stablecoin correctly and competently, and you have somebody. And then there's like privacy, which is like a whole nother thing. Yeah, so like, where did that interest in privacy come from?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose stablecoins and privacy in some way, they're like two halves of like building, quote unquote, like sovereign internet money.
I like that.
I was not always interested in privacy, but I knew I wanted to like work on, infrastructure. I had a fair bit of fun working on the, Nomad, the bridge, and privacy just seemed like the highest leverage area in the sense that not enough. I felt like not enough people were working on it, and like in terms of the way it could move the needle long term. It really seemed like something I wanted to work on as far as like the impact for general adoption of crypto. So that was my part.
Yeah.
And then, my co-founder Sebastian had like a very heavy ZK background. He used to contribute to Plonky2 and help them build their proof system. This is the one that was used by Polygon Zero. So for the ZK EVM. And,
oh wow!
It was kind of a mix of that. He liked ZK, and we were both just trying to work on something that was, would help adoption. So yeah, that's how we landed on Nocturne.
Okay, got it. Well, you guys saw the opportunity, the stars aligned. You met your co-founder, and are like, all right, let's do this. And so for the viewers at home who are not familiar, what is Nocturne, and how do you, in your own words, how is it a 0 to 1 moment in bringing privacy ubiquitously on chain?
Yeah. I would say the easiest way to think about Nocturne is it's essentially a private account layer that sits on top of like existing L1s or L2s. It's essentially a smart contract which inside of it has many internal accounts, and these accounts can be essentially spent from privately. So like when you go to authorize usage of your account, this is all done in a manner which does not reveal any address or kind of revealing info of that sort. So the second part of the question was what again?
And how is it a 0 to 1 moment to bringing privacy on chain, like to make it ubiquitous? Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's been like a couple ways people have tried to do on-chain privacy in the past, and I think that a lot of those examples kind of motivated how we got to like the design for Nocturne. Essentially, like you had mixers which were just sort of like straight up, put 1 ETH in, take exactly that 1 ETH out, and the UX is pretty clunky. It's you guys have used these before, I'm sure. So yeah, we don't think that's kind of like the long-term way to go. We'd also seen a lot of alt L1s from like the past full cycle, and I think the hard part is just it's really hard to build a new ecosystem. And if like your selling point is privacy, it's like a lot of these experiments didn't work out, and so we thought of what would allow you to have privacy in your existing ecosystem in a manner that was like very compatible with experiences people were already used to. So we thought if you could have an experience that was just like your Ethereum account, your EOA, but under the hood you had asset privacy, this would have a lot larger chance of like wider adoption if it could just kind of be simplified in this way.
Yeah, hearing a few of your interviews before, and when you mentioned like, oh, you had privacy focused L2s and chains, and it got me thinking, because if that's the only selling point, like you're only going to have like a niche set of users most likely. So it makes more sense of it to be like a feature, like as like on the smart contract level, than to be a whole roll up or chain right now. Maybe that changes in the future. But like right now, it seems like having it as a layer on top of a chain makes more sense. That's what I heard. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with that. It's building a new ecosystem in itself is like really hard. Like I think most ecosystems from the last run just are probably, it's difficult. I don't think that many really survive. But if your selling point, on top of just the fact that it's already hard is something like privacy, it just, it doesn't tend to work.
Yeah, and so let's dive right into the product here. Like on the Flywheel pod, we've been told many times by our guests that we are the deepest podcast that they've ever gone into for the product side. So don't be afraid to go deep, because our audience is the really kind of a far, I want to call them left curve of the DGen side. So they get this stuff. So walk me through, like, how does Nocturne work? Share with me the notes, the commitment tree, the nullifiers, the join splits. I want it all.
Okay, so you guys do go into depth. Okay,
we don't fuck around here.
That's very neat. Yeah, I can. Yeah, let's see where to start. So I guess I can talk about how a user, like the flow of how a user would.
Yeah, let's start there.
Yeah.
Kind of go from there. If you're a user, basically, you have your key pair, and that's like your private account. And what you want to do is either deposit funds into the private account from your normal public wallet, or receive payments to your private account. And from there, essentially, you can spend your funds by proving in zero knowledge that you own certain funds, which are now deposited in the protocol, and then pair that proof that you own certain assets with an action or set of actions. So like a swap on a DEX, or just like transferring it to a new wallet, something of that sort. And so basically, what happens is you give the proof to the contracts, it'll verify that it checks out you own these assets, and then it'll take up those assets, perform the call on your behalf, and then refund it back to you to another random looking address which you own in Nocturne. So it all kind of like happens within the contracts kind of perform all this stuff for you. That's kind of the high level. Trying to think of like where it sounds like you guys like actually want to dive fairly deep into it. So yeah, where would be like kind of the next point?
Wait, I have a question. So with the way Nocturne's set up with the smart contracts, and you're interacting with the smart contract with like your EOA address. So are all the funds like in one contract, and you sending like the ZK proof saying like, hey, like this is the amount of funds I own, and then it just like reads as like, okay, it confirms, and then it gives you the assets. Did that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's just it's like a giant pool of assets, and you have to like prove of like what part of the pool you own. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Yeah.
So I guess it could be helpful to explain all of the different pieces of, like, for example, the deposit manager, the teller, and then the handler. Obviously, we could talk about the deposit screener as well, because I'm sure everyone's going to rave on you about being privacy, but then you have a screener. So why don't we just start there, and then let people rave and address that first.
Definitely. I think, the deposit process is kind of a separate thing. Maybe we can talk about that after, but at least for the core protocol. Like conceptually, what Nocturne is a shielded pool combined with a stealth address scheme, and there's some resemblance of also like an AAA wallet, just given that like you have to be able to pay for gas without submitting from your own wallet. But I can break that down. Essentially, like a shielded pool was this concept that was invented by Zcash, and it's now kind of like it's kind of proliferated into every type of privacy protocol. Like they kind of laid the foundation, like even, Aztec and Helio, what they're building with private state is like a generalization of this shielded pool concept. Really what it is like you have, it's essentially a data structure where you can, update old records by only appending. I think the way that you would kind of think about this is, normally in a normal database, you have your user record, let's just say, Dave, and you want to like, delete it or, update some entry like your birthday or something. And normally you just go in and change it. But basically in a shielded pool, the way it works is you append a new entry to like this append only data structure, and that implicitly like destroys the old entry. And so what you can do is essentially update your state without actually revealing that you're touching the old state. And this is kind of like the concept this is what allows shielded pools to be possible. You have basically, this Merkle tree of assets or notes, quote unquote. So it's an asset. It has an owner and an amount. And, when I prove that I own some assets in this Merkle tree, like, I prove it's in the tree, I prove I have the key that corresponds to the owner field. And then essentially what I do is, append a new entry to the tree, which implicitly, there's this thing called a nullifier. And basically what it does is you append it to to the shielded pool, and then that implicitly destroys the old node and then creates a new one for whatever state is left over. Does that part kind of make sense? I think this part is usually the hardest to explain, just given
so this is how shielded pools and stealth addresses work, right?
Yeah. So that's the shielded pool part.
Okay.
Yeah,
could
you run it one more time for me?
Wait, and actually, can you explain it like I'm 5? Explain it in this. That was the complicated way. Let's explain it in as simple as possible. It doesn't have to be like exactly like I'm 5, but like if you were to explain it in like a way for maybe like people that aren't deep into it to understand, like put it in your own words in that way.
Yeah. Basically, I guess a shielded pool is, wow, damn, this is hard. I mean, explain it like I'm 5.
Yeah.
I think I can try again. Maybe if I explain the deposit process and how that ties into this. Basically, when you deposit some new funds, let's just say I deposited 1 ETH.
Yeah, one step at a time. Deposit 1 ETH. Yep.
I'll just call it a stealth address. We can talk about that later, but it's an address that I have control of within Nocturne. That basically what it does is those funds go into Nocturne, and inside of this Merkle tree, you create this commitment or note that says, 1 ETH belongs to this stealth address. So that just sits there. And there's nothing private about that part. But when I go to spend it, instead of just pointing to the tree and being like, oh, I own this 1 ETH, it's mine. Obviously, I can't do that because that doxes, who's spending the funds and which node it is. I have to basically generate a zero knowledge proof that says, hey, look, this note for 1 ETH and this stealth address exists in the tree. And, I have to basically create a signature that says I own I have the key that corresponds to the address, which owns this 1 ETH.
Okay.
Cool.
So it's like an extra step. Okay. So
cool.
you have your EOA, and then you you deposit in the stealth address, which is deposited in this shielded pool. And then it generates a zero knowledge proof, which basically says, hey, I own this stealth address that has this pool. And the thing with the stealth addresses and the shielded pools is that they change after every transaction, right?
Correct. Yeah. Basically, yeah. I mean,
I'm getting it.
Yeah, I think that it's definitely getting closer. Basically, you're the one who has to generate the proof.
Okay, I generated the proof
sometime in the future, and then basically that's what gets verified, assuming that you do have the key and that the note which you said you had actually exists, and continue with the contract interaction from there after you've proven the funds.
So is the difference between this and Tornado Cash, with Tornado Cash, it's your EOA directly interacting with the Tornado Cash pool. Here, it's you're interacting with the stealth address, and which is interacting with the shielded pool, right?
Yeah, that's one difference. I think I don't know exactly the specifics, but I think Tornado, you just kind of hash your key. There's no addressing scheme attached to it, so you can't really send someone from.
No,
it's just a message, right? Once you deposit into Tornado Cash, you get this hex code message thingy that you save, and then you give it to the other person. Then they can take that message code thing and go to Tornado Cash and basically claim out whatever that amount is. Is what I remember. But this seems much, much more intuitive to use. And actually, in Tornado, it's not that you put 1 ETH in, you take 1 ETH out. It's you put 1 ETH in, you take 0.8 ETH out because of how expensive it is.
Right.
There's a cost to privacy.
And so one thing you said on the the other podcast I really like was like, anonymity is free, but privacy, sometimes you got to pay for it. And obviously Nocturne is trying to find the best way to make it cheaper. But that's also how I feel. It's like, anonymity in the blockchain is free, or pseudonymity is free. But if you really want that privacy, then you got to pay for it, just like any premium service. And that's a sidetrack. I want to get back to your point of, after I generated the zero knowledge proof for me to spend the funds. Okay, what happens after that? Let's say I don't spend the full amount. Explain that part for me.
Yeah, so this gets into the basically explaining what a joint split is. A joint split is it's basically the type of proof that you're generating, and really it says, going back to the like 1 ETH deposit example, essentially you have some input amount, so the 1 ETH note, you have some amount that you want to spend. Let's just say I want to swap 0.5 or 0.4 ETH, for DAI, and then you have an output, what's remaining, which is the other 0.6 ETH. And so the joint split proof, this proof that we've been talking about, basically, it does the thing that we said. It proves you own assets. It proves that that node is in the tree, and then it specifies I want to use 4 ETH for some public operation, so the swap, and I want to create a new node, this new state, which is whatever is remaining from that, and that also belongs to me. It just gets reassigned to my address. So yeah, essentially. So that part makes sense, right? Essentially, the 0.4 ETH after that, you've proven you own some funds. You've created an output note for what you're not spending. The 0.4 ETH essentially gets sent to a contract called a handler, which basically is responsible for executing calls on behalf of users. And from there, essentially, it performs the swap, which you've attached to your operation, and calls Uniswap. Uniswap will give you back, I don't want to do the math, some amount of DAI, and
Got it.
And then that DAI essentially gets inserted back into the tree as a new node, which belongs to a stealth address, which you specified in your operation.
Oh, I see. And this stealth address could be an address that's not mine. It could be Dave's stealth address, right? If I wanted to do the swap and do that.
I think most of the time it'll be yours. I think this would be where it'd be helpful to describe what a stealth address is. Basically, a stealth address scheme is a scheme where you can have one private key, and then that private key controls any infinite number of ephemeral addresses. So it's basically what one key controls multiple addresses, and the important part about it is these multiple addresses look random. They don't look linked together at all. So really, I guess the part that I left out from before is when you specify the operation, meaning the joint split proof, the call you want to make, so the Uniswap swap. You also specify one more thing, which is what stealth address do you want the outputs of the public action to go back to, and so that is just another address which presumably you've taken your Nocturne address and randomized it. So, and you have the key for that, and you control this stealth address. And so you just append that to your operation, and that's where the DAI that comes back from the swap goes back into the tree.
Stealth addresses remind me of UTXO addresses on Bitcoin, to be honest, because every time you send a transaction, generates a new address. Is that a good comparison?
Yeah, I think that is a good comparison. I mean, also this is Nocturne and I guess shielded pools in general are literally UTXO systems. Maybe I should have started with that. Maybe I'm about to out myself, but I've actually never transacted on the Bitcoin network directly.
No way!
Whoa!
I use Ethereum plenty, but yeah.
Wow.
So, I hope I don't get anything wrong about.
No. Well, that's actually one of the questions we ask on the end of the podcast is when did you first touch the chain? But now I'm curious, when did you first touch the chain? And sexes don't count.
Probably. Well, I had to when I started working at Cell, I just had to do dev stuff. I think that's at least for people on the Eng side. Usually, you just kind of have to test things out.
Yeah.
So you never touched the blockchain before testing it for your work?
Actually, no, that's not true. I used Uniswap like it was sometime before the airdrop. I started playing around with it.
Okay.
There you go.
But
There
yeah,
you
I
go.
never touched Bitcoin. You know,
Well, you
I don't
just
know
leapfrog the whole
Yeah.
system.
Yeah. Oh, I have a good question for you. Maybe we may have some viewers who may not be familiar with zero knowledge at all. How would you describe zero knowledge cryptography, an example of it, to someone who's brand new to it? Do you have any examples you would use? Yeah.
Oh, like the Where's Waldo thing, like.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
that's
yeah.
my favorite
Yeah, let's
example.
do it. Let's do it.
Damn, I actually don't have very many good ones. I mean, I know how this stuff generally works, but I'm not like super deep into the ZK space. I'd say the easiest way to think about it is, and I hope this doesn't sound like too like tech or engineering sounding.
Just
but,
go
like,
for it. You're good. You're
you
good.
have. I think about it in like state transitions. Unfortunately, like you have some state.
Nerd. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah,
I'm here
state
for it.
transitions. Yeah. Okay,
Yeah,
so state
you
transitions.
have
Yeah.
some, let's just say you think about it in like, let's just say a smart contract that has some state, and you want to do some like operation. Let's just say, oh god, never mind. Yeah, you have some state you want to like perform some operation on and like change the state, and then you have that output state. Basically, zero knowledge proof is like a way which you can prove that a state transition from A to B was done correctly in a very like succinct way, and also in a way that has an additional property of like you can sometimes hide information, meaning like you don't have to reveal all the inputs that made this change.
Yeah. So instead of saying state transitions, let's say we can show that 2 + 2 = 4. We can show that we got the answer without showing the 2 + 2 part.
Yeah. That's like that'd be a good example.
I like the Waldo example the best.
What's
It's
the
like,
Waldo one, Kit?
What you don't? Oh my goodness. Okay, so dude, I've been so let me see if I don't butcher this, but effectively, let's say I open up the Where's Waldo book, and you and I are looking at this same book, and I can prove to you that I know where Waldo is if I were to take a really large piece of paper that covers the whole book, but I made a tiny little hole, and through that little hole that you peek into, you see the picture of Waldo. So I've shown to you that I know where Waldo is because obviously you saw it yourself, but I never revealed exactly where Waldo is on the map or in the book.
Yeah. I think it's a good explanation other than the fact that like it kind of like leaves out, it's more focused on like the privacy part, which actually most of ZK has like not been used for thus far.
Wait. Most of ZK has not been used for privacy. Okay,
so what has it been used for then?
What has it been used for?
Oh, I was gonna say like scaling and like I guess the things we've seen so far is like ZK rollups. There's been ZK bridges. I guess I don't know how WorldCoin uses ZK. Unfortunately, I haven't gone deep into that. But thus far, like a lot of the uses of ZK have been for the succinctness property, meaning like there's some computation that would be very expensive to verify in the Solidity contract. So instead of just rerunning all the steps, in the EVM, you verify it as your knowledge proof. But there's no privacy involved in that.
Got it.
There's this one quote. I watched a Justin Drake interview like a while ago on Bankless. And he was talking about like just cryptographic proofs in general, and like where we are. And like he's described it as, in terms of cryptography, we're still in the Stone Age, and there's like a lot more evolution to go. And the thing is with cryptography is like, ZK proofs, like it was like this ZK zero knowledge cryptography was discovered in the 80s. But then like, because you need like 20 years or 30 years of time to like make sure that no one can crack it for then it to be used for applications. They're like, okay, it's not being cracked, so it must be good. And now we're seeing these applications built. Do you know of any other like cryptographic applications that like are in ZK, but even like more advanced in ZK that are out there?
Maybe not more advanced, but I guess like the like FHE has kind of been a similar situation where there's like basically fully homomorphic encryption is like a way which you can perform computation on encrypted data. So like the use case is basically like let's just say I have some personal data that's that I don't want to reveal to you, but Like, you're running a server, you want to like perform some, operation or like do some like data, you know, I don't know a great example, but you know, you want to do something to like, perform some operation on data that I don't want to necessarily reveal to you. Like I can give you that, you can perform it over the encrypted data using FHE, and then give it back to me, and I can decrypt it. And that's like another technology around privacy, which is like still very early in the sense that it's even slower than ZK.
Hmm. And then
And
there's post.
I don't know.
Yeah, go ahead. Oh, I was going to say then
I
there's
don't know if
post.
you've heard of.
I honestly don't know
Go ahead.
I don't know too much about FHE yet, although it was mentioned, I believe, when we had on the radical semiconductor, when we had on Ryan, right? We had a
Mm-hmm.
kid. Yeah, we had Ryan on from
Got
Radical.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, and he created a card that is post quantum resistant, or like that. That's what he's building. And I'm like, what? And I'm pretty sure he mentioned fully homophobic encryption. I get,
Yeah.
there's so many different directions we can go with, privacy and whatnot. But let's like rein it back in. I want to like
Yeah.
talk about the use cases of Nocturne. How do you see it being used in the future? And like the first thing that comes to mind is what happened with Constitution DAO.
Yeah, it's a good example. Yeah, I mean, I can talk about how we expect it to be used for now, and then like
Mm-hmm.
how we kind of hope things can progress. I guess for now, um, I think the usage will be like, well, if you look back at like previous, licit uses of privacy, it'd been a lot of retail people, most of which were traders. A lot of times you don't want to be copy traded if you have like, a known address. And so, the majority of the users of things, like Aztec, for example, were a lot of them were just like retail users. So I think we're mostly focused on this at the start. I think this is kind of the way it goes for a lot of protocols at the beginning. Um, so yeah, at least on mainnet launch, what we'll be deploying and what you'll be able to use is essentially, we'll deploy the contracts, and then the interface that we have will uh, let you do mostly basic things. So you can deposit funds. You'll probably be able to receive payments as well. We need to add that to the UI, but there's that, and then from there you can like basically withdraw to fresh addresses, just so you can transact out of a new address, and then you can also do things like swaps and staking. So it's not like fully expressive in the sense that it's like a straight up wallet, but it does some of the main things that accounts do, and we hope to like with some protocol changes and also like iterating on the UI, eventually build up to like infra that resembles just straight up like an account that does everything like a normal wallet does, but you have privacy under the hood.
Got
So
it.
that's where we are
And
right now. I don't know if you have
Privacy
any
built in.
questions on that first.
yeah, I do. I wanted to ask about privacy and composability, because I believe you kind of mentioned that in one of the other pod. Could you show me an example of what does composability look like in the Nocturne future?
Yeah, I think so. Composability, it basically is just like, well, if we think back to like the mixers or L1 and L2 examples, like mixers just they have no composability, because you just take the money out to a new address, and then that's you get your new key and you transact that address. Um, L2s and L1s that have privacy built in are like the same. It's just like you can't use your existing ecosystem, which is the worst part. I think for when we say composability, or I think I've been using the term compatibility a bit more, in the sense that like is it compatible with an Ethereum account like an EOA? It really just means like, can you interact with the same things that you would interact with your public wallet? I don't know if that
Got
helps.
it. Got it. Okay, so it's compatibility in the sense that, after it goes into Nocturne, it could always come out and be used across all of DeFi again. It's not that it's kind of like locked in Nocturne's its own ecosystem that you got to use like a privacy DEX and a privacy lending protocol, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, basically, like, can you still? I guess the easiest test is like, can the things that you're used to doing with your like MetaMask wallet, or whatever wallet you use, like, can you still do that within Nocturne without having to like withdraw to a new address, get your new key, and like manage all these like burner wallet keys. Can you all like control this from the same account and still get a similar experience to like a public wallet?
Oh, okay. Because in my mind, I was thinking if I wanted to say stealth farm this new Prisma finance pool, and I don't want people to follow me, like, could I put in the ETH and then on the other end take out the ETH, but then I would need to create a new burner wallet in order to go farm that. But you're saying I don't need to do that. I could just take that ETH that's in Nocturne and go and farm it on Prisma right now.
It depends on how you. Well, I guess the V1 for Nocturne, like it mostly the compatibility. It works with protocols that take tokens in and also create output tokens. So like think Aave tokens or like Uniswap.
Okay.
It's just gives you back new tokens. It doesn't. Probably the thing with airdrops that doesn't work is like if you were to airdrop farm another protocol, for example, you'd probably just withdraw to a burner wallet and use that, because you want this right now. Like one limitation we have is like all of the transactions are executed by the same contract. So
The handler.
yeah, exactly. So
The handler.
Let's say there's multiple like people trying to use this for airdrop farming, and it's all coming out of the same address. Like, how do you know? Like, it'll give some airdrop reward to this contract, but then whoever gets it is like the first to just take it all. So it doesn't quite work in this case. But it's a limitation we're looking to like change or to fix in a future version of the protocol.
Oh, I see. So there needs to be some kind of returning token in order for it to recognize that it belongs to me. If it's more of an accrual situation. I see.
Basically, like there needs to be a token that you can put back into that commitment tree. So for now.
I see.
Yeah. I just want to talk about the story of Constitution DAO and like what Nocturne like could do to prevent a situation like this, because I just find this situation so interesting. Like if anybody doesn't know or doesn't recall, like Constitution DAO was a DAO that was raising money to buy a copy of the Constitution. They raised a bunch of like money really fast, and they were about to bid $30 million to buy the Constitution. But the problem was it was an auction, and everybody could see that they were going to bid $30 million. You know who really wanted the Constitution really badly? None other than Citadel's Ken Griffin. And he saw on chain they had $30 million. So he was like, you know what? I'm just gonna bid $40 million. And right off the bat, I'm not sure if people remember, Ken Griffin bid $30 million like right off the bat. And there was like nothing they could do. Like they had a limit of like how much they could bid. But because Ken, it's like you're playing poker and you're playing with your fucking cards open and everybody could see your cards. Like that's the problem when you don't have privacy on chain like this. But if something like Nocturne existed, Mr. Ken Griffin wouldn't have seen how much money that Constitution DAO had, and it would have been a lot more private, and it would have been actually a bidding war, but instead of just like a dunk by Ken. So I think that's a really important story and an important case to like press when like talking about like why do we need privacy on chain. It's stuff like that. If we want like institutions to actually like if we want like on-chain institutions to be successful on chain and to actually like compete with their off-chain counterparts, they're going to have privacy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think Constitution DAO is a good example. I mean, essentially the way you would have fixed that on Nocturne is like you have, instead of all this money just going to like this safe that is like very clearly for this particular auction, like this get deposited into Nocturne, and you don't actually know. Well, one, you don't know what funds are actually being sent to the protocol for the auction, and then also like there's more funds. Presumably the pool is more funds than just what's being used for the auction. So you also don't know how much in total is for this.
Okay, actually, let me walk through that example because in my mind, I see it's quite still obvious. Constitution DAO multisig has $30 million. Out of nowhere, that $30 million goes to $0 million, and then it's used with it. We saw that it interacted with the Nocturne contract, and then the $30 million is gone. Isn't it obvious that there's $30 million now in the pool?
Oh, I see. I mean, uh, I guess the right way to do it is like, assume presumably you have this, this safe, Gnosis safe, and like over time, all these people who are trying to like help the DAO buy this thing, I was like sending money to this safe. And, that's how you end up with $30 million there. And I
Right.
was saying instead of sending it to the safe and like, the safe accruing the funds, you just keep sending it into Nocturne to like one account, which is administered by
Got it.
the
Got
DAO.
it. The DAO owns the self address that everybody is contributing towards.
Right, exactly. And
Got
so,
it.
or rather, they own the like key for everyone is sending to these stealth addresses which belong to the like Constitution DAO admins, and so
Oh, so
everyone is
multiple
keeping
stealth
access.
addresses. Yeah, multiple stealth addresses would be generated, and then people would be sending to them, and then you don't know like how much is in it because it's multiple stealth addresses.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. All you would see is like, oh, like all these people are sending funds into Nocturne, like, but you don't really know why or for who it's going to.
It's like, oh, what's going on here? It's private. We can't see what's going on.
Got it. Could you explain? I don't think we covered this, but the viewing key and the spending key bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Basically it's like a common thing. I think most privacy protocols have this. Is like the spending key. It's like that's what you use to authorize usage of funds. um, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. The viewing key is derived from the spending key, and it allows you to look at all the notes that have been created within Nocturne over time, and like essentially like trial decrypt them. And if it turns out that you decrypt it and it's like, oh, this is mine, like the decryption worked, then that's how you know which notes belong to you, essentially.
Got it. And then you said you can give certain, permission parties a viewing key so that they can also see into your accounts, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I suppose in yeah, if I guess in the Constitution DAO example, if you wanted everyone who participated to have a viewing key, because if they
Mm-hmm.
want to be a part and like see what's going on, you could do that. Um, and so like only the members of the DAO or only the people participating can actually see. Oh, like all of this money is going to the same address, and this is all going to the Constitution DAO admins.
Got
But
it.
then if I'm Ken Griffin, I can donate to Constitution Down and say like, oh, how much money what do they have here?
Right. You need some OPSEC, I guess, around like who you give these keys to. But in theory, that'd actually be even funnier.
Yeah. Wait. So you have to manually give these like viewing keys via like a Telegram message or something. It cannot be at the blockchain level.
No, like so the viewing keys are like sensitive information that you don't want to share. Like, I guess an example
Oh,
of like viewing key is like a good example is let's just say like someone needs to like audit my like financials or whatever, and like they need to like be able to see the transactions I did with my public wallet, but also my private one. Like you could give that person like your viewing key, but like only them, because you don't want someone else to see your transaction history, and then they could kind of trace it through and be like, okay, here's what this person did.
got it. Okay. Could you talk about the deposit screener? I think I think everyone understands how Nocturne works. I want to now take a step further back and talk about privacy at large. But before we do that, share with me about this Dex deposit screener.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So this is like the, I guess, the um covered, like the thing in the closet that like I think people don't talk about, or the scary part, which is like the
Ooh,
compliance aspect.
Mm-hmm.
I
okay.
think if I had to preface this, like compliance is honestly, I think the hardest part about building in the privacy space. It's like the tech part it's interesting, and like there's certainly some challenges there. But usually, at least from what we've seen, it's not like the limiter. The limiter is actually like, or what filters people out is the compliance part. So um, if you look at our docs, there's kind of a plan
Mm-hmm.
outlined there. Essentially, the V1 of the protocol that we're releasing, you can basically think about it. It's like semi-permissioned. Like once you deposit funds, you can spend them as you want. There's nothing stopping you there. But like the step to deposit new funds into the protocol is currently permissioned. Essentially, you deposit into this like kind of this deposit manager contract, and then it kind of waits there and like basically we run an off-chain actor that uses some data analytics to kind of assess the risk of different addresses, and then from there, like, different deposits will be either accepted or rejected in the protocol. I think the large majority of deposits are from safe addresses. Like we've kind of like done the work of checking historical uses of the other privacy protocols, and like for the most part, most deposits are not illicit. But this is kind of like the starting plan is like permissioned. I want to preface though, like and I think a lot of people miss this, or at least they, I think FUD is like kind of a common thing that happens around this kind of stuff. The goal is not to stay permissioned. I think if you read in our docs, like the paragraph below, kind of the V1 plans, like our long-term plan is to try and make this as permissionless as possible.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like it has to be.
Yeah, this is something that should eventually kind of be neutral infrastructure, and like, nor do we really want to like be running a centralized process forever. It's not. It's certainly not something that we're interested in doing. It's just you accrue liability over time for that kind of thing, and so we've explored a lot of options. I think the main one that actually allows you to reach the permissionless state is the scheme called proof of innocence. I'm not sure if you guys have heard of it.
No. Could you explain that to us?
Yeah. Essentially, so proof of innocence was the scheme that was, there was a paper about it written, co-authored by Vitalik, Amin Soleimani.
I know this. Yeah. But explain it.
It got a lot of excitement as well. So, I don't know. I guess I can explain it as well, just for context. Essentially, what it is like, think about Nocturne, except when you go to spend your funds, you send your operation with the ZKP and what you want to do. You send that to a relayer, and the relayer will take that and like pay the gas for you, because you don't want to use your own wallet. That would be doxing yourself. But instead, basically, what proof of innocence adds is that you can also, like, what you do is you include a proof that you're within a subset of like safe deposit notes, or like safe notes. And so essentially it allows you to like kind of prove that you're not part of, like, say a list of sanctioned wallets that have somehow made it into the protocol. And so basically the relayer or bundler will like check your proof and make sure that you're like, the subset that you're proving against is like valid. You're not part of like a group of addresses that is malicious, and then we'll relay your transaction if that proof checks out. What this allows you to do is essentially like segment the anonymity set into different levels of risk. So, say that we're running our own bundler, we perform like very proper checks, and like we keep our whitelist of notes very up to date. You would send it to us. If it checks out, then our bundler will go ahead and relay the transaction for you. But if it's not, then we just reject it, and you have to go either submit it yourself or go to another bundler who is willing to submit it.
Agency and privacy. That's what I call it.
So is it possible for someone to effectively, once Nocturne is like, fork Nocturne and remove the DEX, I keep calling it DEX screener, but the deposit screener part, so that anybody can just use it, any address?
I mean, in theory, yeah. I think there's some operational component as well to like some of the off-chain stuff. It's not necessarily super straightforward, but yeah, I mean, you could do that. If someone's willing to do that, kudos for taking on that amount of risk. I think it's quite. You're either crazy or you have like a lot of balls to do that. But
yeah. I mean, that's obviously a question that everybody would ask. Is like, if you were, if the U.S. government rains down on Nocturne like they did with Tornado, what would that look like?
Don't scare them. They haven't been launched yet.
Don't worry.
Is that what I mean? I'm sure he's been thinking about this.
Yeah,
so
of course. Yeah.
Yeah. Real quick, let me just turn on my lights because I realize it's
Yeah.
Well,
Go ahead. Yeah. He's getting a little scared. That's why you got to turn the light. I get it, man. Me too.
Wait, that is a straightforward question. Way to be straightforward. Got to get to it though.
Yeah. No.
It's what's on it. It's on everybody's heads. In everybody's heads. Yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry. So the question was about. So, well, what exactly was the question? I know it was about regulatory.
The government comes in and bans Nocturne. All U.S. addresses cannot use Nocturne.
I love how the light came on, like at this part. Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah. Well, I'd say for starters, and this will be apparent when we launch, but we're actually not supporting U.S. customers. I guess I didn't start with that.
I see. Got it. There you go.
Okay, there we go. No U.S. Okay.
Yeah, at least in the front end that we're running, and like in the off-chain infra that we're running. Like,
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there we got it. We got the answer, guys.
US folks can't use it. There's a lot of complicated regulation around this. I think the two main like hurdles people have to navigate are like money transmission risk, which is just are you custodying funds? Are you redirecting the flow of funds? Like, do you have control of them? I think this is just like, unfortunately, the regulation here has been like fairly unclear. Account abstraction wallets, for example, like their bundlers are, probably viewed as money transmitters. The relayers for Tornado were viewed as money transmitters, and like when you look at them, they don't control any funds, but it's just like, unfortunately, like poor interpretation, I think, of regulation currently. But to avoid that, we're just not serving U.S. folks, at least for now, until regulation is clear. As far as like, I think for something like Nocturne to be banned, the other hurdle is the sanctions and AML component, and that's it's self-explanatory. Are you doing your due diligence to like prevent bad actors from getting into the protocol and like using this? I suppose. I mean, is your question what would we do?
Yeah, what would you guys do in that case? Like, even if you guys fold up shop, like the Nocturne contract could still exist, right? It's live on mainnet.
It would take
right?
a lot of. Yeah, I mean, so we'll have upgradable contracts for some time. Partly
Okay.
because like you want to be able to hotfix things
Right,
and
of course.
find vulnerabilities. So if it really came to that, I suppose we could pause new deposits and just people would have to withdraw their funds. But it would take a long time to get to the point where we make this fully non-upgradable, and then we'd have to be extremely certain that the checks, that proof of innocence, we have a good system that works and that really limits the anonymity of like the higher the kind of canonically accepted bad actors, like protocol hackers or whatnot. But that's a bridge to cross for later.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. All right. I had a question about this whole privacy narrative because it's pretty stigmatizing. I mean, we saw what happened with Tornado Cash. Monero has been a fixture and a thorn in the U.S. government for a while now. Privacy is like pretty stigmatized. Like that's we won't say it any other way. So like, what is your plan to change the narrative about privacy? Like, how can we say like, hey guys, privacy is normal. Look at cash. Cash is private. Like using cold hard cash is private. Like people like have a right to privacy. Like how do you change the narrative about privacy?
Yeah, I mean, for what it's worth, I'm not sure regulatory bodies particularly love cash either. But yeah, it's a good question. I think I can kind of give the way that we think about it. Like, we're trying to be very methodical in the way that we roll out privacy. Like we start permissioned, we kind of take off the guardrails over time while trying to ensure that the measures we're replacing with the permission part facilitate effective like self-regulation essentially with proof of innocence, and are effective in limiting the utility that bad actors get from this. That's really what you want. You want it to be as accessible as possible for most users and like extremely hard for those widely accepted to be bad actors. And yeah, I mean, I think being methodical and slow about this, engaging with regulators over time, and just I think we're under the impression there's a right way to do this over time. It's hard. A lot of people kind of like don't want to have to like put up with this stuff. It's quite frustrating when you are writing a smart contract and you change a line of code and you're like, is this going to result in like my thing getting sanctioned? Or it's like the ridiculous things you don't normally have to think about. But we're of the impression that that there's a right way to do this, and done right over time, being careful, and like at each step making sure what you're putting in place works. Then there's a way to do this.
Do you think your interest in privacy comes from a technological curiosity, or more of a political, philosophical curiosity, or both?
It's interesting. It's actually been a big theme that I've realized. I think mine was more technical, and just like I want to see crypto adopted for more stuff. I think over the last cycle, lots of cool stuff happened with like DeFi and all the growth of all these new ecosystems. But everyone kind of has the age old question of like, when can we start using this stuff as like real money for a little bit higher utility?
Mm-hmm.
That's mainly was my motivation. My co-founder Sebastian, I think he's very, I think he's a bit more like passionate about just generally like privacy, and as kind of like a tackle onto like just general freedom. But yeah, it's a mix of both. But I think for me, it was like kind of driven more by like wanting crypto to be used for more.
A practical purpose per se.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. Something else I was about to ask. Actually, no, never mind. So, Kit, did you have any other questions?
Yeah. I actually wanted to kind of click back into how like privacy today is really stigmatized, like badly. Like you only want privacy because you're gonna do something that is unscrupulous or something wrong. Do you think that is Nocturne going to do anything to change that stigmatism? Or have you thought about any campaigns or anything to, privacy is good. It's okay to be private,
Yeah. I mean, actually, for this, I think I have a better answer, which is really, if you look back in history, actually, I took an interest more to the like crypto wars of the 90s after working on this. And something you see is like, you have this exact problem with, just encrypting internet traffic. I think it was the NSA. They wanted to weaken encryption such that you couldn't have more than 40 bits of security, which is obviously you can break it. You can see what people are sending over the internet in plain text, and they're like, oh, if you want privacy, you must be doing something bad. But I think the telling moment in this kind of conflict between devs who were trying to like build stuff over the internet, like commerce and other stuff, and then like the NSA was. Eventually this stuff became so critical to like certain businesses who were actually like doing real commerce online, that you couldn't actually, it was actually hurting real use cases in businesses, to like weaken encryption. Some of these folks were actually, customers were getting hacked. So I don't know particularly what that moment would be for crypto, but I think it's kind of like a two-step thing where like obviously privacy, the people who exist in crypto today are quite diehard about certain, ideological things, but, that's the starting point. But, you always want to like bring in more players who are kind of increasing the quote unquote legitimacy of crypto. And I think it's good for the space as a whole. I think that will definitely change this stigmatism a lot. And can only hope that a moment like what happened in the 90s, happens here again as well.
Yeah. I remember what I was going to say. It seems like the goal, if I'm like a privacy protocol, I think the goal is to shift kind of the burden of responsibility of who I'm interacting it from like the core team and the protocol to the user itself. Like the ultimate like end state would be you have this private permissionless protocol, and it's up to the user to figure out like, this is like, I'm thinking like the ideal scenario for like the protocol itself. And you have like the user like participating in like proof of innocence and stuff like that. Yeah. So it's like bring your own wallet.
I think you got it spot on. Either it's the user or it's like the interfaces. I think pinning responsibility onto the actual protocol itself is like everyone said it after the OFAC sanctions. Like it's quite dangerous like precedent to set for freedom of speech.
Legalize math.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So I think the goal over time is once we can make this protocol more permissionless, take off a lot of the guardrails, but still have effective like self-regulation, is to shift the burden away from, shift the liability away from the protocol itself, more towards like say the interfaces, the wallets, the front ends, etc., or directly to the users themselves.
Yeah, going back to the beginning of the conversation, we talked about different chains that are private, and one that had caught my eye years ago and has been gaining some traction right now is DarkFi. And I remember interviewing the DarkFi founders for the Defiant at LizCon like about 2 years ago, around this time when like LizCon happened. And one of the founders, I think it was like Amir Taki or someone like that. He proposed that like DeFi is on its way, splitting into two. There's going to be RegFi, which is like KYC compliant, like neutered of its potential DeFi, and then there's DarkFi, where you're going to have like all like the crazy shit happen. You're going to have like AI bots and agents and all this other shit in the DarkFi in the space. So I'm curious, like, what are your thoughts on both like this split, seeing a split happen between like RegFi, DeFi, and DarkFi, and what are your thoughts on like the DarkFi project itself?
Yeah, when you say, I know I've heard of this like particular project, but when you use DarkFi as a term, do you refer to like, is that just like DeFi as is, or is that like specifically like what would fall under that umbrella?
No, DarkFi like is like it's a project. So like
actually
it's like a chain. It's like a chain. I haven't used it yet, but DarkFi is like a chain, and it could be used as like an umbrella term to describe like all of privacy per se. Mm-hmm. But it is like a project being worked on actively by devs. I'm not sure where they're at in their development. I wonder if they'll fall into the niche trap, because that's what usually happens with these privacy things. But
I think we should just generalize it, Dave. Just generalize it to like, all of DeFi as it is today versus a regulated version of it.
Yeah, I don't honestly know. I know there've been more projects around like KYC pools or KYC tokens. There's also like real world assets, which some of which you can't actually hold unless you have KYC. I think like Ondo, I believe, is an example of that. I don't know, honestly. Like I could see a split. If there's enough liquidity for both to exist, then I suppose it's fine. The worst case would just be like, one takes liquidity from another, and there's like not actually enough to like for both to really work out well. But yeah, I'm curious if you have thoughts here too. Like I haven't thought about this particular issue too much.
It's an interesting observation. It's like there's definitely a lot of, it depends on the regulatory pressure and whatnot. And I think like the more regulatory pressure there is, the more like things will be pushed to the dark, and will probably make it more resilient over time. Like I'm sure like DarkFi will be a thing, but I think it comes down to like the number one thing comes down to is, you're right, it comes down to liquidity. Because if there's not enough liquidity, then like forget it. But if there is like enough liquidity and then like you could probably like see something. And let's say if I'm like an AI agent and I'm like, I can't open a bank account, but I can go generate myself an address. So yeah, like I mean, yeah, I just personally think like generally like AI could definitely be like a big user of all these things.
Yeah, I think also like it'll probably get segmented by like region and country.
Yeah,
so, like the US will, if there is a split, like definitely US folks will be in the RegFi version for better or worse.
And I was gonna ask, how'd you meet Vitalik, and what made him interested in putting his name as like a investor advisor to Nocturne?
Yeah, so we met Vitalik at Zuzalu.
Zuzalu.
Nicole's son, who helped, who organized the event. Like
shout out Nicole, we love you.
I know, yeah. I'm definitely grateful for that opportunity to go there. But yeah, we met him there. We like chatted with him, I guess, just like over coffee for a while, kind of just honestly just brainstorming like cool technical.
Oh, was that like the vegan breakfast thing in the morning?
Probably the one that was open like every morning.
Yeah, the one. Yeah, that one.
the only place to eat there.
Only place reasonably priced to eat.
Exactly.
Because it was free. It's free.
That's true. So I guess that was like where we met him. And yeah, I mean, I think generally, if I had to guess, like Vitalik has a couple like core areas of interest, and all of them are kind of very much aligned with like the long-term success of Ethereum. It seems like currently those are privacy scaling and account abstraction, or generally just like UX. But I guess AA is like the first thing people think of. And like I think historically, if you look at the projects that he's tried to support, they're along these lines, just because that's kind of like where he ideologically aligns. Yeah, as to like why he invested, I think he just invests in things he really wants to see out there in Ethereum. And we had a fun time chatting with him and like shooting around interesting like concepts that might be relevant to Nocturne. So yeah.
Did he contribute a lot of ideas and advice to your development?
He has. He's definitely helped like guide a lot of the product decisions. Yeah, like around compliance, for example, like he's definitely helped us kind of think about like different ways the product could go. He also, I think by proxy of like just talking to a lot of projects, you accumulate a lot of like interesting ideas, which might not immediately seem relevant, but then an idea pops up in your head, and like, oh, like you could check this out; it might be relevant. Yeah, the benefit of being able to kind of work with the breadth of projects.
Got it.
And so I got a question specifically about Nocturne. Is what does success look like to you?
That's a good question. I'm curious. Does this get asked to every project? I mean, I guess it's
Yeah.
a common one. We don't hear that.
Only the ones I like.
The other ones get asked what is failure.
What is it?
Yeah, I think success for us is. I mean, I think it's probably a function of a couple things. Like, I guess the vanity metrics of like volume and TVL are like everyone kind of looks at those. I think those are definitely important, and it's like a good proxy for measuring like am I doing all right in certain cases. I think for us, like having privacy just be more widely adopted than like trying to break out of the like, oh, I only use this because I'm like really hardcore, and like making it easy enough for like normal people to be able to use it without having to like opt into like weird stuff or like change their habits. I think that was really like kind of what motivated building this project at the beginning. Is like originally what we wanted to do was like just build a full out smart contract wallet that had built-in privacy. I mean, the protocol itself is not too far from that, but there's a couple of reasons why that's not currently possible in this version, but will be soon. The idea was like, you just have your normal wallet, you do your normal things, but you don't have to worry about your address being, exposing your whole financial history. I think that's
Nocturne, yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say I think the other component is like it'd be great for more institutions to be able to enter the space. Obviously they're not going to do anything meaningful on chain unless they have some kind of asset privacy. And I think the main thing is just moving around funds. Like if it's just totally transparent, like there's really no reason to do this over TradFi. So
No way, Jose.
yeah.
Nocturne, making privacy ubiquitous. Yeah.
We'd love for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. That's like a mouthful of a word to say, ubiquitous. Nocturne, making privacy ubiquitous. There we go.
Yeah.
I got I got one final question, then we can go to the lightning round. So what is your roadmap looking like? And could we see users get granted some responsibility in the future?
So some responsibility, meaning
Is a token.
I see. Okay. It's the most diplomatic way of putting it. Honestly, I should start saying that more often.
Yeah, it is a responsibility, granted responsibility.
Yeah. Yeah. So for now, we're going to be on mainnet in a couple weeks. Sometime between the middle and end of November. We'd love to like kind of build up the retail adoption of the V1 product and just try and get as much usage from that as possible. It's definitely a lot easier to use than like past privacy products have been. But we still think it's just kind of like a step one as far as like making this accessible as possible. I think as far as next things, like, we would like to transition away from, having a permission protocol. It's not a responsibility that we want to hold, nor, this should be neutral infrastructure. So, doing some of the technical lift on, having effective proof of innocence and like basically using the permissioned version as like training wheels to build up to proof of innocence, and then like implementing the technical part of it. Outside of that, there's like a couple of things a couple of guardrails in the protocol that we want to like kind of remove, which is we want to let you just like be able to transact with any protocol. We don't want this like, it only works for output token protocols thing. Like we want to remove that limitation. And then maybe I think you guys will like this part because it's actually quite interesting. And shout out to our advisor Wei Dai. He's now at 1KX, but he actually came up with this neat idea where like, if you want, let's just say you have a smart contract wallet and you want to, like, one thing we commonly get asked by AA wallet teams is like, how can I like use this as an AA wallet? But it doesn't quite work because by having a contract which has all this information and like about your authorization, like that'll always dox you. But one interesting thing you can do is like if we make a version of Nocturne where instead of the authorization scheme being like your spend key and just signing a message, if you have it be and hear me out, like a ZK EVM proof that you could authorize a transaction in your smart contract wallet, you can actually what you can really do is like spend funds out of your AA wallet, but those funds exist within Nocturne, and you actually don't reveal any information about. Like,
oh, so it's all Nocturne.
Yeah. It'd take a very large effort to make this possible, but that I think that is like part of kind of like the end game that we hope for. Any EOA or AA wallet that exists out there like automatically has like a parallel private account which they can access from the same authorizations.
Got it.
That'd be something we'd love to make possible.
I have one more question because so you guys are on mainnet. How much of a lift it is to get this on other rollups, and is it possible to have this on Frax chain in the future?
I didn't know Frax was building their own chain.
Yes, they are building Frax chain, and not only that, they are building a market for block space.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah,
no, I really did not know that,
but yeah, you gotta subscribe to flywheeldefi.com for all the latest updates. Shameless plug, but yeah, dude, like listen to this. So like, imagine with your Nocturne smart contract, like people are interacting with it, and every block you get rewarded with FrxETH.
Interesting. Oh, I see.
Yeah.
That is wow. Okay, maybe I need to keep closer track of Frax. I guess I just hadn't heard about this yet. Yeah, to answer your question about the roll-up part, it's not terribly difficult. It's the same process as deploying mainnet. You just deploy the smart contracts, run the off-chain infra, so like the bundler to relay stuff, and yeah, it's definitely something we're interested in as well. I didn't include that when you asked about the roadmap, but it's a lot cheaper to run this thing on L2, and it's definitely something we'll be eyeing.
Yeah, this would be so sick on Frax chain. Oh my god, Sam would be so happy about this. No, it's in they're
soon TM.
Soon TM. Should be out like January next year.
Yeah.
But like think about it, the first smart contracts are gonna get like the most of those FrxETH rewards for the block space. Like this is perfect for it. Oh my, imagine getting rewarded for being private. That's so sick.
That is pretty cool. How is this built on like Cosmos SDK, or how does this work?
Hasn't been publicly, and I don't want to. I'll tell you what it is after the show. But but
actually, yeah. Actually, I got a more general question for Nocturne in terms of like liquidity, because for like Tornado and all these kind of mixers, you need a lot of people coming in and mixing with you. For Nocturne, you don't really need that, right? Because people don't really know how much is in the Nocturne contract, or
you do.
Can you check?
Do
they do. Okay.
One thing that helps the situation is like because you can spend arbitrary amounts, meaning like you have like Tornado, there were no output nodes when you spend, so that was like one limitation for like the original Tornado Cash. For us, like if you spend like 0.1 ETH or 1 ETH, like your anonymity set is anyone who is any other note or any person who has like deposited at least that much. So it's not like the anonymity set gets split across different pools.
Got it. Okay, so it's
Yeah,
all
liquidity is still something that is like top of mind for something like this.
okay. I see. I can't just shove in like a big stack and then pull out a big stack on the other end because it would look very obvious to see who that was.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that was always the problem with Tornado Cash. You could like identify addresses quite easily.
Yeah, I mean, I never really transacted with that much ETH, so maybe it's different for you guys, but yeah.
No, not me. Not,
Only see
not
it on
I.
the chain. It's like a movie to me, you know?
Yeah.
It's fiction.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that wraps it up. Nocturne making privacy ubiquitous across DeFi, across crypto, across the on-chain world. Luke, we're going to the lightning round, so we got some light for you, some lightning to bring light to the darkness. Kit, go first.
Yeah, so I mean, since you already asked touching the Virgin blockchain experience, I want to ask you, what is your favorite off-chain touch grass activity?
I like surfing. I grew up in San Diego, so
Oh, cool.
Surfer boy.
it's
Endless summer.
game.
Yeah. Nice. What was my question? What's some advice you would give to your younger self?
What would I say? That's a really good question. I don't know. I feel like I had a weird path because like I actually left college early, to work on Cello and Nomad. Sometimes I wish like I actually stayed because you miss out on some things that you appreciated. But I don't regret it by any means. I think I had a lot of fun doing other stuff, and I don't know. It's a good question though. Maybe it depends on the day you ask.
Oh, that's true. Honestly, I don't know. I thought you were. I guess you must have like left college early. I guess like 3 years ago.
Yeah, like around 3 years ago.
Oh, okay. So maybe in like 5 years we'll ask this question again when you're back on.
Yeah. And for me, if you weren't in tech, what other professional career path would you be on right now?
I might choose law. I think especially in crypto, it's quite interesting. It's very like it's not very well defined, which is quite cool. Also, I don't know if you guys watch Suits. Maybe I just like watch too much. Like,
oh yeah,
I used to watch Suits. Yeah,
I love Suits. I love Suits.
Everyone thinks I want to be a lawyer for at least like a couple of days after watching that. So,
yeah. Your mom and dad will be very proud of that answer.
Yeah. And the final question for me, who would you recommend to be our next guest? Who would you want to see on Flywheel?
Ooh, that's a good question. So essentially it's like, what are some of the most interesting projects that I've heard about recently? Well, I was just at an Eigenlayer event in New York. I don't know if you've spoken with the Eigenlayer folks. Also, Shri.
Yeah, we've
had them on like in February. So like,
we were early. We were early. The Eigenlayer wave. You saw that coming.
Yeah. Who else? Who have I spoken with?
It's Vitalik. I want to see Vitalik on here. Other than Vitalik, because that's like a no-brainer.
I think the Aztec folks are interesting. Like I have a lot of respect for them.
Aztec, yeah.
They're like I think building stuff in like the confidential like state world is cool. I think Renegade, maybe you've had them on. Like I haven't met the folks from there, but I think it's quite an interesting experiment, like building a fully on-chain dark pool. Probably similar themes to what we've talked about. Yeah, I don't know. Have you chatted with either of those folks?
No, I haven't chatted with them yet. We're new to the world of privacy. I kind of just saw the thread of you guys raising, and it sounded really interesting, novel, and unique. I was like, I want to have them on and talk about this and see what's cooking up over here.
Thanks.
Yeah, but
Luke, come to mind later.
Sounds good. Could you let the audience know where they can find you online and find Nocturne on social media?
Yeah. I'd say the best place, at least for, well, honestly, the best place to look is just Nocturne underscore XYZ on X or Twitter. Um, there's links to like the rest of our stuff in our Twitter bio, but yeah, that's like our main outlet for social media.
Nice. Go
Cool.
follow. Luke, thank you so much for coming on. Nocturne, making privacy ubiquitous on chain. I'll keep saying it over and over again. Luke, thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, man.
Thanks. Welcome to the post game show. I'm your host, DeFi Dave, and I'm here with Capital K and Sam McCullough. This time around, we shed a little light into the dark. We had on Lu Chang from Nocturne, and we talked about building a privacy layer on chain with what they're cooking up there. Really interesting, really innovative, cutting edge tech he has cooking over there. Guys, what are your thoughts on this one? And also, before I go in, Sam was just going off in her like chat.
Yeah.
Just the whole time. Like,
I was gonna let Sam take this one.
Yeah. Dark pools this, like compliance that. Yeah.
Look, I'm really for this thing, right? Like, I'm a big believer in Tornado Cash. I think that what Tornado Cash built is a really important part of privacy, and the loss of it has been huge for the entire Ethereum ecosystem. And so there needs to be some sort of replacement. And so the general idea, and there's a bunch of different flavors, right, is that there's demand for people to want to have privacy while they transact on Ethereum. And so there's going to be like different variations of this. Some people want to have a contract that they can put assets into, almost like Nocturne, right? Where they can interact with DeFi from a pool of shared assets, right? Some people want to have quasi dark pools where everybody puts transactions into the dark pools. All of their transactions can take place inside the dark pools and doesn't rely on external liquidity or any external DeFi apps. And so Nocturne is just like one of many people building a solution like this. I think we can include in our show notes, there's a really great article that a guy named Mohammed Yusuf, who is I believe a venture intern at Delphi Digital, did the other day, where he talked about like these dark, let's call them dark pools, right? Because that's what they are, and about all the different variations. And so if Nocturne can figure it out and be fully permissionless in the future, I think it may work, right? Like we talked with them about how their deposit structure is going to work, how they're going to be able to like segregate roles and responsibilities and also risk. And maybe that's enough. But I think that implementation and operations is always going to be the key factor in this. Like we can always think about it in theory, but it's really going to have to come down to nuts and bolts once the tech gets out there.
Yeah, I agree. But I think the larger vision of Nocturne is what I like the most. Is he wants to be integrated at the wallet level and be able to interact. Because right now it's limited to sends and transfers effectively, right? Yeah, you could do a swap, but you need to get something back in return. But I feel like swaps and transfers are like now the most basic thing you can do on Ethereum, right? There's a million of other things you could do, or actually maybe there's like 10 other deeper actions that you could do. But once it's able to handle that, because I've created a lot of burner wallet, like my MetaMask looked like a, just not great.
How many are you up to, Kit?
It looks like a meta mess. It looks like a meta mess. I think I'm at, hold on, let me click create new wallet. Let me see what that number is right now. 74.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, no.
Good for you.
Yeah. It's a meta mess.
Meta mess. But no, I was thinking, go ahead, Sam. Oh, I was going to say like, you go.
No, go ahead. And I'll hop in next.
I was going to say, I kept on repeating myself, like Nocturne is making privacy ubiquitous on chain. For that to actually happen, wouldn't it have to become like a standard, like an EIP or something, what they're building?
No, I just think that it needs to get enough like volume running through it, TVL inside of it, that you can grow the anonymity set. Because look, at the end of the day, the only thing matters is the anonymity set. And if it's small and only 100 people use it, it's probably very easy to track. But true. If you have several tens of thousands of people putting capital into Nocturne, then the anonymity set grows incredibly large, like what Tornado Cash has, and it can achieve what it wants to, which is to be able to provide privacy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
So
think Dave is like,
Yeah.
just for my MetaMask example, it was like the moment I created a MetaMask wallet, that is a stealth, that is part of the stealth address family, right? Like right away, like integrated into that level, then I think it'll get there when everything's by default on the system. Yeah.
Yeah. It's really unfortunate. I mean, the switch to proof of stake has really taken away a lot of the privacy aspects that you could have with Ethereum. Like, there's no way to get new Ethereum now. Previously, when we were in a proof of work system, if you wanted to get untraceable Ethereum, you just go buy some miners, run the miners in the basement. You know, instead of spending $4,000 on Ethereum at a centralized exchange, you just buy the miners and wait for that brand new Ethereum to get deposited to an untraceable address, right? And then you have purely private ETH, right? But now we don't have that. Like pretty much 99% of all the gateways to get money on chain require KYC, and so it's become a lot harder to obfuscate where the source of funds is, and so there's demand for these style of like on-chain privacy tools like Nocturne and all the other ones. You know, and this really begs the question of like, where is privacy needed, right? So is it at the wallet level? Is it at the execution level? So, you know, we were looking at that picture before the show and like Flashbots was on there, right? So Flashbots is providing essentially private meme pool, like off-chain meme pools, mempools. And,
meme pools.
Meme pools.
Find me in the meme pool with Pepe and Doge and Bitcoin.
Yeah. Like
there's also a great project name.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great one. Suave. And transaction bundling, right? So is that enough? Or do people want to be in these ZK enabled privacy pools where they have shared assets that create a robust and rich anonymity set? Because they're really like taking on two different parts of privacy, right? Like one is privacy at the wallet level, another one is privacy at the execution level, so that you can not have the ill effects of MEV. And you know, there's other forms of privacy as well too. So it's a nebulous thing.
Modular privacy.
Modular.
Right. Yeah.
Make privacy great.
Yeah. So it's a full stack question. It's not just like an address account abstraction question. Like just by having privacy at the wallet level doesn't mean that you're gonna have privacy anywhere else.
Yeah.
So it's a big subject. I mean, the question of middleware always is a issue. You know, if they can be forced into adding TRM account filtering or address filtering for, say, whatever sort of risk score that they have, right? You're like one hop away from using Tornado Cash or you're an OFAC banned wallet. Like, there's no reason that they can't put on KYC, like full KYC later on, to say that.
What if like somebody with like I think somebody did this with like a tornado like affected wallet. They literally just like sprinkled dust into like all these influencer like, you know, that's kind of like the what's it called, the Samson defense. You know what I mean? Like, you know the biblical story of Samson when he like takes down the wall of the temple, and like the whole Samson thing of Israel nuclear supposed philosophy, blah blah blah. You can like look that up later. But the Samson defense, it's like, oh, like you're gonna like blacklist me, I'm just gonna blacklist everyone. Like here, blah 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 blah.
So I was typing in the chat. I was asking him, like, I wanted you to ask him, guys, about like, would he go to jail to implement privacy? And you know, somebody like Amin, I think would, because I think Amin fully believes in what he's doing and is like committed to the cause. It's like, it's philosophical for him, right? But I think hearing the answer from Luke here, he said he was more on the technological side about like, let's see what we can do. Let's build something. And so maybe it's his co-founder who would be, you know, the one that would take the fall here.
I think there's nothing wrong with that too, though, right? Just building it for the product's sake of putting something that people will use and that you deem is valuable. It doesn't mean you have to go to jail to be that you take it seriously, in my opinion. Or do you think because this is a privacy product that this diehard philosophy dogma needs to be a part?
I think it's that. I think you have to be there because nobody's going to give you permission to in our post 9/11 BSA AML KYC regime. No one's going to give you permission to do that. They're never going to say, "Oh, hey, like just go ahead and build a fully private set of smart contracts that allow you to obfuscate transaction data that companies like Chainalysis might want to collect." Nobody's going to do that. So it's going to have to be a incursion into the technological space where the technology just has to go out there and rapidly grow. And it has to get to a point where, like Tornado Cash, right? It becomes permissionless and nobody can do anything about it. And for good or worse, then people start making rules around it.
For better or for worse.
Mm-hmm.
Dave, what do you think?
I was about to like wrap this up and go say
No,
like,
I just want to hear from you for this specific one.
what do I think of what?
Of this, do you need to be a dogmatic privacy,
Oh yeah. Okay.
maxi?
So I think the answer exists like somewhere in the middle. It isn't like full on like die hard, like dogmatic, like die for this, but it's also like not like completely practical. It's full KYC, like whatnot. I think there's a middle ground that, can be walked here, even though it may seem like a thin tightrope. And I think the way to do that is something that I mentioned on the pod. It's like the more you push responsibility to the user other than the protocol, and it's the user's responsibility to not interact with like, sanctioned addresses, and making it easy for the user to make sure they don't interact with sanctioned addresses, then like the more this will become accepted and like more ubiquitous. Because let's even take like a step back and let's say like not even sanctioned addresses. Like I don't want to interact with fucking Bob because Bob sucks. Like Bob has fucked me over. Fuck Bob. I don't want to touch his fucking address because I hate Bob. You know what? And I'm just gonna be like, you know what? I'm going to just put Bob's address and like, I don't want Bob to be in my anonymity set because Bob sucks. Well, like that should just be like a feature, like whether, and like, obviously like you want to use it for people that are sanctioned. Like, I don't want to be like mixing with North Korea. Like, I don't support that shit. So like, just I think proof of innocence is like the good middle ground for this to walk. So that's my take.
Yeah, and I agree with you there. I just the middleware layer on top as well too is the thing that worries me, because like if you can be forced into using a middleware, then there's other types of middleware that can be added that has a much more diverse set of criteria that can filter addresses out. Dave, I actually wanted to go back and ask about that political, philosophical, technological.
You like that question? Like that?
I want to ask it about Sam. So, having worked with him and having known him the longest and been a part of Frax since the beginning, like where does Sam sit on the political, philosophical / technological divide? Like, is he more in it for the tech, or are there like deep-rooted philosophical elements that drives him to create Frax?
I think it's a combination of interest in the tech, opportunity of stablecoins, and definitely deep philosophical underpinnings that like make Frax what it is and like how he designs Frax. I think he definitely cares about like being as practical and compliant as possible. Like, that's what he says. If you listen to like any of his interviews or talks, like, they're like, we're here to like, be compliant, but, at the same time, walking that like middle ground, because stablecoins and privacy are like quite similar in like the regulatory gray area. Like privacy even like may be just like a little bit even more like darker gray area, no pun intended. So, but I think you can like just see hear what he says and see by like Frax's actions, like what his political philosophy, and also just like what is driving like the Frax protocol design and direction forward. I'm actually writing an article about this, like the actual philosophical underpinnings of Frax, and what it has inspired its design. So stablecoin maximalism takes credence to Plato's realm of forms from Plato's Republic. It's literally like there's this ideal form that exists in this other realm of what a stablecoin should look like, and he's bringing it to this material realm on chain. And then there's the I was just with him last week. We were just chilling, and we were late night. We were just watching philosophy lectures of this guy Michael Sugre. He's fucking phenomenal. He's the best like lecturer I've ever heard. Really engaging. It's like these old lectures from the 90s. I highly recommend. And he like posted a lecture about like the moral philosophy of Kant. And like when I saw that, and when I saw that and like learned about the categorical imperative, it's just like, oh, like this a categorical imperative is like, if you're going to do like an action, like if you're going to have a mantra, like imagine if it were universal law. And so, for example, like I would say recently with, the bigger the protocol gets, the safer it should get. Like a protocol has like a moral responsibility to become safer as it grows to become bigger. So like if it gets bigger, then it becomes safe. It should become safer. That's like a categorical imperative. Like there's no question about it. Doesn't matter if you're in like the US, China, North Pole, South Pole, Venus, Mars, like as a protocol gets bigger, like it should get safer. Like I guess like a more like biblical example is thou shalt not kill. Like doesn't matter where you are in the world, like Venezuela or Nicaragua or Mozambique, or I'm going to just say whatever random countries come in my head. That is like wrong wherever you go. Thou shalt not kill. So like, Sam is a deep dude. He's everything that he like does is like very well thought out, very tested, and he's not. It takes a lot for him to change his mind, but he does adapt and evolve when necessary.
Yeah, I think it's a really good answer. And there was a quote by Hester Pierce in the latest dissent that she made. She made some comments about LBR and the LBR decision. And she essentially said that blockchain technology and everything that we're building here is technology that enables dissent. And so, these privacy protocols firmly fall into that category of what dissent is. And
yeah,
it skirts the edge of what is acceptable. But I think that, if you build it right, it can be done and it can be very successful.
Amen to that. And we'll be,
yeah.
It's necessary, and we'll be there every step of the way, tracking this stuff. No pun intended. And so, if you want to, follow along with us, make sure you go and subscribe. Hit that bell button for all the latest updates. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. Give us a like. Make sure you follow us on all of our socials at Flywheel DeFi on Twitter, Telegram, and TikTok. Make sure you join our friend tech for exclusive show notes. Make sure you subscribe to flywheeldefi.com for all our latest updates. And make sure you follow me on Twitter at DeFiDave22.
Follow me at 0xcapital_K.
And I'm at traders_insight.
And we will see you next week.
Peace.
Okay.